Okay, we should be live.
No, we're back for another. Wait, what are we calling this? Second thought.
Second thoughts. Yeah.
Second thoughts. All right, but in this case, yeah. So second thoughts are, we're going to do some of these recordings before and after social 19 classes. Just either pre thoughts about the class or reflections on the class. And so yesterday, we did this. We did the class on Afghanistan. Rich, wait. You know what? I have to respond to something.
Mm-hmm.
Can you believe it?
Can I believe that?
Anyway, we just. And it was a great class with Rich was there, Colonel Gary, and then we brought in Akram and Rafi and Mr. Rashidi. So it was good, and a few things came up on the stream that I think are worth. Hey, are we recording? Are we live?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, it's not showing it at my end. Okay.
It's because if you're on YouTube, then you have to go back to the channel, and then there's a live stream that's up because Melon didn't allow me to use the one that I created.
Okay. All right. So why don't you just? I can't see if anybody's watching and where we're at. So, wait. Should we start over?
Yeah, go ahead.
You want me to start over? Then I'll be able to see. Wait,
Oh, you mean start the stream over?
Start the stream over, or should we just keep going?
Well, why don't you just hit the chat button? Because the chat and then stream will be where it'll tell you.
Yeah, it's not. It's not showing. It's showing that the live recording is still at 0. You are a live stream. Okay. Anyway, listen, man. We're as always. We're like trying to like figure this new app out. But anyway, we're back. So we did the class yesterday. It was a good class. It's always there's so much to talk about and so many issues that are coming up. There's just never enough time to address all the questions. But one thing that did come up in the class, apparently, Jeff, right, is this kind of being willing to or wanting to be able to critique religion, and in this case, wanting to be able to critique Islam. And for me, I agree with that. I think it's fine, and I'm very critical of different parts of different religions. Whether it's Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, Islam. I mean, I do that. I think the reason for many people that it sounds like I'm so open to Islam, or I kind of treat Muslims with a kind of kid gloves, as we say in English, is in part because there's just so much animosity here in this country, in the United States anywhere. There's such a great deal of animosity and negativity directed toward Muslims. So like I'm always going to take the contrarian viewpoint, right? So if there was an overabundance of love and people who are not willing to look at some of the things that happen in the names of Islam, then I would be very critical of Islam. And I am among many Muslims who are unwilling to look at some of the negative things that other Muslims do in those environments, in those situations. But because I'm talking in a particular context in which, and for so many parts of the world, there's a great deal of animosity, certainly in my classroom toward Muslims, and I'm much more open. But two, I'm not going to dig into that critique, but I think it's really important that people feel that as though they can critique religions, and you have to, right? I mean, that's the nature of it, and thoughtful critique, right? I mean, in this country, in the United States, we have a great deal of just fear of we don't want to be seen as a racist or sexist or transphobe or Islamophobe. And so maybe we wouldn't speak up and even ask certain questions that are worth asking and are acceptable to ask. And so, so for me, I think that I don't want to portray that idea, because I think people need to feel willing to question, especially religions, because if you don't question religions, like, people can do a lot of damage in the world in the name of a higher power, in the name of some kind of authority that is above all beings, right? And that would be the God or the many gods, or however they define that. But to me, it's pretty dangerous, man. Including people who feel like, they have ideologies at the end of the world. We're all going to go see God, and it's going to be a great place. And so, like, well, let's just blow up the world. It's fine. We'll all get to God faster. I mean, those kind of people really scare the hell out of me. Any variation of that. So I don't have that perspective. So in any case, I will say that I have met, among whatever the religion is that one can identify, in my experience, the vast majority of people are members of that religion, and I'm talking all the major ones, because I've had opportunities to meet many people from all the major religions, dozens, hundreds, or thousands, right? The
Your mic just cut out. We've been dealing with some audio issues today. It's okay. It's just like, yep, there it goes.
And so anyway, the vast majority of people are kind and loving, and so I just start there. Some people are more cynical. I'm not cynical. I actually think that most people are good people. So that's my take on the world. All right. So anyway, listen, Jeff. So we addressed that.
So
and is it okay then for people to have fear of Muslims? You said someone put something.
Well, not fear of Muslims, but fear of the ideology. The claim was being made that being afraid, or they used the word phobic, which I'll take as fear, but having phobia of Christianity, Islam, Judaism, any major religion, communism, socialism, they were saying pretty much any idea, it is okay to be fearful of, or to have a phobia of. When they were talking to, it sounded like to me more critiquing than being fearful of. So I wanted to figure out what your thoughts were between the two, because we were also having a discussion, like, can you be completely open-minded and then having prejudices that cloud your vision?
Yeah. Well, for sure on. Yeah, I mean, anytime when we take something to the level of fear or phobia, for me, when I have something that well, first off, I'm not. When I have something that I'm afraid of, or I would call it fear, I try to look at that really pretty deeply, because generally speaking, there's not a whole lot to be really afraid of. I mean, I suppose some things, scorpions and tarantulas maybe, but not really tarantulas, I guess. So. But that's sort of rattlesnakes. There you go. How about that? Although there are a lot of these Christians, these snake handlers that aren't afraid of rattlesnakes at all. So I don't know. I guess I could just follow them and see what they do. But in any case, when I find things that I'm afraid of, I generally want to look at it pretty closely, because it's generally it usually points to something that I probably need to look at. So if I'm thinking about a fear of an ideology, I'm like, well, maybe I just don't really understand that ideology, or I don't understand the people, or I don't have enough experience with it. So even an ideology like, capitalism or communism or whatever, the ideology isn't the problem. It's the ways in which it becomes politicized, and it becomes a talking. They becomes a talking point, or a perspective through which people who want power or have power can exert that power over other people. So communism itself. Like, I don't, people talk about communism. I mean, I don't even know what are we talking about when we talk about communism, right? Like I don't have any fear of communism. Are we talking about Mao's China? Like, or are we talking about, the Stalin's Soviet Union? Like, what are we really talking about? Or, like, are we talking about Pol Pot? That's not common. So I don't. This is sort of silly to me, right? So anyway, or are we talking communism? Are we talking about the ideology of Jesus Christ, Jesus of Nazareth? Because that's pretty communist in its orientation, far more so than the Soviet Union or Mao's China, even though the Soviet Union or Mao's China raised that flag and Jesus never raised the communist flag. But I think I could take the New Testament and interpret it through a lens of communitarian morality, which is the foundation of communism. And I could make a very strong argument that Jesus was far more of a communist than Mao ever was, in practice and in ideology. So, but nonetheless, right? So I think that's what I would say about kind of the fear or the phobia or something you need to look at. Man, that's a crazy. I love when I get these questions and then I just go off somewhere. Hey, how about, can I show this photo here? Let me show that photo. The meal, the first meal that Roman cooked for us, and I said something about how, like for Rafi and Roman, I kept saying, because as all this was happening, I mean, this was really for Rafi, it was about 6 months that we were really thinking like, okay, if things really get bad, you're gonna have to get out, because he was getting threats way earlier. I mean, for years.
Dude, when I was starting at Wink, there was already conversations about like him having to like evade people and making sure that he's safe and that his office is secure, and like that was happening in 2016, 2017.
Yeah. So one of the things that I had said was, hey, we're in this together, to Rafi and Roman, Lori and I both. And I said, but one day we're going to have a meal and you're going to be safe. I'm either going to be in Afghanistan. We will be in Afghanistan with you and have a meal, or we will be outside of Afghanistan, and Roman, you're going to have a kitchen and cook us a meal. So anyway, this was that first meal, and it was scrumptious and amazing, and there was a lot of love that went into that meal. Many years of love. 10 years, because when I first met Rafi, I took a little stuffed animal to Argoan, who had just been born. So a little Penn State lion. Anyway, and then hang on, let me see. And hang on. And the same with this meal. This was a big meal. I said, hey, listen, we're going to do all of this for your family. I mean, we put hundreds of hours in, man, to make this happen. And I said, I want a meal. Like, that's how you can repay me. Just give me a beautiful meal. And there's so much love around that table and that food, man. It was just amazing to be there and to finally be able to share food. And for Afghan culture, food is just critical. It's so important that you share a meal like that. And then, of course, this photo is my favorite photo, because it just was like, yeah, that's all I want from you, man. I just want a beer. And for me, that this was like, oh my God, this is one of the most moving, like probably 3 hours of my life. I will say, of all the things, between the meal and the beer, and like, man, it was just, I can't even hardly put into words what that meant for me as a person, what that meant in my heart, to share that. Yeah. And unfortunately, we didn't really have enough time in class yesterday to explain that. So we kind of really went quickly, but Yeah, it's just like if anybody, to have the opportunity. It's like with Bassem, when I went to, when Lori and I visited Bassem's mother's home and she made a meal for us. I mean, that was just special, man. Wow, to be in her kitchen, have her make a meal for us. It was so like, wow, I had to pinch myself to have a sense
Right.
that this was really happening. So yeah, it's really cool. Hey, I don't see that anybody's watching. Is anyone watching?
Yeah. Not a lot of people. Somebody on Twitch asked in reference to your comment on socialism or communism. They asked, "What about fascism? I understand that it's part of capitalism, but I'm still fearful of it happening again, even as we understand how it comes or rises and comes into power."
Yeah. Well, listen. So here's something. There's let me just say something about the ontology of these things, right? Of these ideologies. So communism, first off, doesn't exist and can never exist, right? But communism emphasizes the community. Okay, so it's when power is distributed as much as possible across the community, whatever that community is. So that's when we think communism in its purest form. It can never exist. It doesn't mean anything else. So forget about the Soviet Union, China, forget about any of that stuff, okay? It just means that power is just distributed across people, okay? Which is, historically speaking, the vast majority of human societies have been organized around a more communistic orientation, okay? Because small hunting and gathering societies are very communal in their orientation. And so that's kind of the nature of how it operates. Um, the opposite side of that is some kind of authoritarian. And again, I'm talking about ontology. Ontology means the state of being. So beingness, like the essence of it. So the opposite of communism is when power is concentrated into a singular or a very small group of people who are the authority and they have all the power. So the power for a group of people is held by a very small number of human beings. Okay. So you have communism here, you have authoritarianism here, and the authoritarianism, sometimes we call it totalitarian, right? That can be the term we use, but the idea is there's some kind of term that references the fact that power is held, okay, and with a very small group of people or one person. Well, fascism is just a word for authoritarianism or totalitarianism that we gave, that the Italians took on, right? And so we used it for Italy, and Mussolini grabbed onto that, and we kind of applied it there, in a sense, right? So fascism is just it's a fun word to say, so I say it a lot when in fact all I really mean is an authoritarian system or something, right? But I sometimes will still use fascism as the word, but really it's communism and authoritarianism are the things you want to go with. Democracy, right, is there's no such thing as a democracy per se, okay? Demos, you have demos and kratia, so the power in the people, right? Again, democracy is a thing that you don't have, you strive for it. You have more of it or less of it. Communism, there's never pure communism because power can never be equally distributed among a group of people. So it's more distributive, right? So it can be more communitarian or more communistic, and no one person or a very small group can control everything about a larger group. So it's never pure authoritarianism, right? It's just more authoritarian or more communitarian. Democracy simply means, it's we're looking toward the communist orientation of things, like people. So the communal, right? Demos, power going more into the people, meaning that the people, the greater numbers of people, when it's more democratic, it's more communitarian, right? It's more communistic, meaning people have more power. So we've come to just throw these things around like we live in a democracy. Well, that means nothing really. We live in a society that has what? We have voting, but that's not indicative of a democracy. It doesn't matter. The authority, there's the Iran has voting, right? Iran votes, and like the Russia's voting right now, and the Soviet Union voted, and Mao's China, they voted. I mean, that's irrelevant, right? So anyway, I never talk about democracies per se. Yeah. So anyway, I hope that helps, because it's a really nice way to see it, and it's not a critique. It's not a critique of the United States. It's just helping to clarify or it's not a critique of any system at all. But I would hope that it helps to clarify what we're talking about when we're discussing these things. Yeah. About the class yesterday, there was somebody asked some questions about just lives and how many lives is it worth to, can we yeah, okay. All right, so listen, hang on. Let me do this. There we go. Tremaine's in the chat. Awesome, man. Hey, unfortunately, I only have about 15 minutes, but I want to get a couple more questions that people have. So Jeff, if you can like pop something in the chat, like a question that's something somebody has. I can't see the chat for whatever reason. I see the streaming, but it's just not showing that there's a chat happening. So I can't see anything. But if you can pop a question in there. In the meantime, let me say that apparently on the stream there was some from yesterday's class, and if you didn't watch the class, it's just really the story of our work in Afghanistan. Coming full circle, and it's a class that I've been kind of waiting a long time to give. I mean, there's certain variations of it, but there was some kind of if there is sentiment about totalitarianism, what's the response like in the punk community? The best is to just kick them to the ground with your boots, but not everyone is. Yeah, hang on. If there is sentiment about totalitarianism, well, I mean, here, you gotta, I think we have, once again, I think I want to really emphasize, there is no pure totalitarianism, right? And just like there's no pure communism, it's just, again, it's like you lean this way or you lean this way, and a society is shifting all the time. The United States, we go from a state socialist society to a more kind of consumer capitalist society on a pretty regular, on a moment-to-moment basis. The government steps in, and socialism is the idea that governments, the power really resides in the government, and the government exists to ensure that there's fairness across the board. So the government exists to move a society more toward a communal orientation, communist orientation, or move a society more toward an authoritarian orientation. Like the government exists to really uphold the rights and privileges and power of a small number of people, or it exists to uphold the rights, privileges, and power of the larger number of masses. And so, a socialist government is when the government exists to uphold the rights, power, and privileges of greater numbers of people. So we see this in all the Scandinavian countries as an example, which, they're very strong governments. People pay a lot of taxes, and they insert their authority to ensure that there's a greater amount of equality between people than we have in a place like the United States. So here's yesterday. Question for Sam, if appropriate. Few people would choose to live under the Taliban, but we killed far more than the Taliban would have. How many lives are worth it for freedom? That's a really interesting question. And we killed in this war, these 20 years of war in Afghanistan, it's not just that we killed the Taliban, that civilians die, and civilians die in war. And this is not a thing. It's a thing I've talked about many, many times in class, but I did not talk about it yesterday. And this is like I don't know the answer to that question. Like, I really don't. And that, like, right now, people I'm talking to my friends in Afghanistan right now, and people who work for us, and things are just happening. I mean, it's terrible. The situation is really terrible because there's so much poverty. It's estimated that about 60 to 65% of Afghans right now are living under the poverty line. I mean, deep poverty, like really very troubling. And so at what point in time do we step in to like throw the Afghans out and like start a war again? Like, but they're surviving, like they're living out. I watched videos, and I'm getting photos and I'm getting videos from the street, and people are walking down the street and people are doing their thing and they're living their lives and so on. So what if we start dropping bombs just to get rid of the Taliban? Like, I'm not sure that that's the best approach it's not the best approach to things. So it's really, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know. It's very disturbing, and I don't know whether it was worth 20 years. I really don't. I don't. The 20 years of war, and the many people who died. Mm. And who gets to decide that, right? Like, who decides? Who? Like, I don't know. I honestly, it's very disturbing for me. So I think one of the things that you get in a class like 119, it's like we don't take the middle ground in things in 119. What we do in there is we take these more extreme positions, right? And then we bring those, we take hold of those, and we see the world from those positions, and then we take a different one, right? The idea isn't to bring them all together, right? So in any one class, in any one moment, we're not trying to bring things together and make them happen. We're just trying to take these positions and kind of force people to think about things in a way that is very different from how they might think about it. Sarah, will Sarah be able to go back to her home? Eventually she will. She'll be able to go back. But what might happen is what happens with lots of people. Like, I talk to lots of people who emigrate, like as children, right? They come to the United States. I have so many students who have never been to their home country. That when they left, things were in terrible situation, like Liberia or Sudan or Somalia, and things were really falling apart, and they left when they were falling apart, and they grew up here, and they just never go back home. They don't really even have an interest in going back home. And so somebody like Sarah might be that person who just, it's like, yeah, I don't know, I don't have any connection now to Afghanistan. And maybe if she doesn't have family there, it would be hard. Yeah, there's would be almost no need to. It's so interesting, actually. Rafi's kids, but maybe she'll have cousins there and so on, and then she'll go back. But eventually, people will travel. Yeah, right now it's not happening. So it's crazy. It's crazy to think about. Really, it's just crazy to think about how the world so many lives can be disrupted in these ways that are just deeply unsettling, really deeply unsettling. Yeah. The thing that shocked me when I saw them in Europe, this is a really, really good question. Oh, thanks for asking that. I think was how quickly the kids were adapting, man. They're just learning languages. Rafi's girls, Sarah Parsa, Mr. Rashidi's youngest son. Man, they're learning Dutch. They're learning English. Rafi's girls, they watch these cartoons in English. their English is just amazing. So they're more reluctant to speak, but they are speaking because they would speak. Eventually, they were just talking with Lori and I, but they understood 95% of everything we said. And I'm like, man, where are you getting that from? So they're learning. So they know Farsi. They know they're speaking in Dutch with all their friends. And at school they're speaking English, and they're going to pick up they're going to pick up French probably, right? And so like here are these kids that are just mind-blowingly they're just opening to the world. And Sarah is so shy, but she and I, we were together. We went shopping. Her and Mr. Rashidi's Uma, that's her mother, and Sarah and I and Parsa, we all went shopping together. And I'm like, hey man, I don't know any Farsi, but but she did. She knew English, right? And so she had to interpret, and it was so awesome, just because she's very shy, so her voice is really soft and stuff. So yeah, yeah. So it's yeah. So Farsi is yeah, and they know a little Pashto, and yeah, they know a little Pashto, and also, but yeah, hang on a second. Hang on one second. Yeah, and yes, they know the Pashto, but in Afghanistan they speak what is Dari, but Dari, D-A-R-I, but Dari and Farsi are basically the same. And yeah, so that's what you would say. They would say they speak Farsi, but it's kind of like, I think like British English and American English, or like Spanish in Spain and Spanish in, Latin America, or, Portuguese in Portugal or in Brazil. It's kind of like that. So, but they all know a little Pashto, yeah, but not Arabic at all. I don't know any Arabic as a completely separate branch on the language tree. Yeah. So, all right, Mom. Any other questions? This feels like a really nice way to do this. I like to. It's definitely definitely worth watching the class if you haven't watched it. I think it's a great story. But we have a couple classes next week. I'm not sure yet what we're going to do. But I'll put it together. I'll start really putting that together tomorrow, and we'll see what happens. We'll get back to having some. We did not talk after class about the police class, but I felt it was good. I felt good about that class. I like where we went, and I like having these experiences. So Jeff, anything else? Any other questions on you got? That's it. All right. Well, I will say that, if we ever have people who come onto the stream who are, friends of Social 19, or in some way, like Mr. Rashidi and Bassem and Rafi and so on. If anybody ever wants to have a conversation with them or reach out to them, absolutely, let us know, and we'll put you in contact, because I think that when I think about, like Mr. Rashidi, Rafi, Bassem, I mean, all of these folks, Ernso and Haiti, I mean, so many people have just so much to offer, and are just, really beautiful human beings, and worth, if you feel like you'd like to talk to them. Irvin, who will be coming to class in a few weeks, coming back to class. So yeah, it's pretty cool to have this kind of sense in the class that we have all this community of people out there who are, you know, just good friends that become good friends. It feels rewarding and honorable. Actually, it's probably one of the parts of my life that I feel most honored by. Yeah. All right. I think I will end it. And maybe what we'll do is, Jeff, on the next maybe on Tuesday before class, we'll do like a pre-class stream, or maybe we'll do another after one on Tuesday. We'll do something for Tuesdays. On Wednesday, we'll do something for Tuesday's class. All right, I'm out. I gotta go. Pick up my goddaughter actually from school. So that's pretty cool. All right, man. We'll talk.